It still may be technically summer, but things are about to get really frosty in Lincoln, Nebraska this week. Should Scott Frost have made the trip back from Ireland to Nebraska? Let's talk about Scott Frost's job status. Before we talk about that frosty weather in Lincoln here this week, a reminder, subscribe, ring the bell to stay notified. If you love the B1G, this is the place to be. All right, let's talk about Scott Frost. An eye-opener that was for me on Saturday. Let's talk about Saturday, this past week 0 Saturday first, and then we'll dive in more to the detailed stuff. It was the first really big eye-opener where Scott Frost made a decision, and he admitted this was his decision, the onsite kick, that cost his team the football game. Completely flipped the momentum. In my humble opinion, more risk involved there than reward. And that move reeked of desperation, reeked that, oh, we can't stop Northwestern. I want to try to put this game away right now because we feel that our defense is not good enough to deal with what Northwestern is if we kick it long. And then you're up by 11 in that situation. It's just a move that has a bad vibe to it. It reeks of a poor coaching decision all the way around, cost them the football game. Maybe there hasn't been as much of that in the past where, maybe it's a fumble, maybe it's a player error, but this was a pure coaching decision that completely flipped the football game. In that game, Pat Fitzgerald, it seemed like, with conservative play calling, kicking that field goal, he was just daring Scott Frost, say, you're going to make a mistake. We all know you're going to make a mistake. We all know you're going to blow it. I'm just going to patiently wait here for that to happen. So that's my takeaway from Saturday. Now let's dive a little bit into where I think Scott Frost's future is headed. You can throw out any stat you want to, right? If Frost wins his next 50 games, he still won't have a better record than Bo Pelini. Tim Brewster had about the same record in 3 years when he was at Minnesota and got fired that Frost does in 5. You could throw any of the Mike Riley, of course, comparing him. They even did that last season. You could throw out any stat in the book, but we all know Frost has a longer leash because he's from Nebraska, quarterback of the 1997 national championship team. Look, that's no secret. We all know they wanted to work because of Frost's connections to the university. That's completely obvious to me. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not a big fan of giving guys leashes just because they just so happened to play here when the team was good. I think that's unfair. And it's unfair to the fan base, and it's unfair to the players, and it's just unfair all the way around. Let's get into the future, okay? Here's the big one. Scott Frost's buyout goes from $15 million to $7.5 million after October 1st, the same day they play Indiana. Let's say they beat Georgia Southern, North Dakota, right? Let's say they win those games, and let's say they lose to Oklahoma. You guessed it, by 1 score. They're 2-2 at that point in the season. I believe if they beat Indiana, to some degree it doesn't matter what they do against Indiana in this scenario. But let's say they beat Indiana, but lose at Rutgers on a Friday night. Okay? I think that's enough right there to get Scott Frost fired after the Rutgers game. That is a Friday night game, which means it's a little bit of a longer period to get ready for the Purdue game, which means you have the extra day or something to get people in place if you do make the move. If you lose to Indiana on October 1st, that's a short week coming back for Rutgers. I think it's unfair for the incoming coaching staff to be able to kind of prepare for that situation. I believe if it's going to happen in the middle of the season, it's going to happen after a loss at Rutgers. That seems to be the timing right here, right now. What do I think will happen? Well, it's hard to say. I think Northwestern is going to be a pretty good football team. I think a 2-2 is a safe bet after the Oklahoma game. We haven't seen Indiana or Rutgers. Those could both be improved football teams. You look at the guy, Tom Allen and Greg Schiano. I respect those coaches in being able to turn things around and being able to play good football. I do not trust a Scott Frost-led team right now. And I also looked at something else. You want to look at the bright spots. I want to be positive. And I was going through Scott Frost's resume, and I'm like, what's good? What's been good? You could arguably look and say the 2020 victory over Penn State is the bright spot, and maybe this year's transfer portal class. Other than that, it has been terrible. A loss to Troy before this year, tons of losses in the transfer portal. Of course, we know the one-score loss deal. Look, this has been a bad run for Scott Frost, and if he doesn't get it turned around, if they lose at Rutgers, I think he's out. I think he's out. Mark Whipple is in. I want to hear what you guys have to think about this. Do you kind of agree with the timeline that I kind of set out? Do you think he should be fired right now? Do you think they should have left him in Ireland? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe here to Big Ten Ted. We'll see you in the next one.